Okay, this is how you always dial in the perfect guitar tone. Always, always, always. No more crappy tones. Look, your technique is probably already not that good to start with, so at least, just kidding, but at least let's get the tone right once and for all. And then of course, if you need help with leveling up your playing, if you've been kind of maybe a little bit stuck at the intermediate stage, we can chat about working together. If not, it's completely fine. I don't care. Let's just continue with the video. All right, so let me go over like the key principles of like guitar tone. It's actually so simple. Like there's gonna be no way you can mess this up after you watch this video. Okay, so please pay attention. So I'm gonna use the Neural DSP plugins, not only because, well, I am endorsed by them, but and it's like on the only plugins I use, but because they're really realistic and basically they allow me to not have an amp at the moment. Obviously this works with like any plugin. There's a lot of free options. Let's start with a lead guitar tone. Formula is super simple. I can't believe there's still people that don't know about this, but this is how it works. Guitar, overdrive, amp, cabinet, obviously, effects. That's the chain. Okay, the overdrive, usually people like drive at 0 level all the way up, so you don't get extra distortion, but you just push, the level. I'm gonna explain a little bit more in depth this, but amp is just like it's gonna be obviously a distorted amp, and then goes into the cabinet. Obviously, in this case, we have like a microphone emulation. If you're playing like live just with the amp, you can ignore this, and then lots of delay, a little bit of reverb. That's it. That's the formula. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about gain staging, because that's like the other thing you really need to like understand. The thing is with gain staging is really just like managing all the stages where you have a control on volume or gain, right? Which is the same thing. First one, obviously, if you're using a plugin, it's going to be the audio interface. Well, I guess, first one will be the volume knob on the guitar, but it's usually going to be like all the way up. So from there we have the volume of the interface. And look, there's like, I've seen all those videos that are like, you're using plugins wrong and all that stuff on like how to set the volume in the interface for like recommended gain. I don't give a damn about that. So I don't think it makes any sense, because the volume input will depend on the tone that you want to get. So like sometimes I can do this on the input of the plugin, or I can, like just go like really quiet if I want to like have like a more quiet tone. So like it really doesn't matter. Like you shouldn't pay too much attention to like the recommended stuff. Like who cares? So usually I'm like, I just make sure I don't clip on the interface, and like, whatever volume that is, I'm usually fine. If you have like less volume in the input, you'll have a different tone. Think of like there's like boost pedals, like clean boosts and all that stuff, or like analog pedals. That's the idea, right? So obviously if you go in more hot, like with more volume, you're gonna have a different tone. And so that's still part of the tone. That's why I really don't care about like recommended settings. So on the interface, it's like, I'll show you. I don't know if you can see it, probably too small, but yeah, I'm like peaking at -6. We could actually go maybe a little bit more than that. Yeah, whatever, -4, it's probably fine. And so let me turn off the pedals here. Let's start with the amp. Everything at noon. That's another thing, like also like amp settings usually don't matter that much. So okay, this is what we're starting with, right? Pretty boring, even though it sounds pretty cool. Like, it's very realistic. It's a little bit, doesn't have enough balls, if you know what I mean. So when that happens, it's because the input is too low. So what I want to do is I want to drive the input a little bit. So that's why the overdrive pedal exists, right? Now we're driving the input a little bit more, getting like more input gain. Say at 0, just level all the way up, drive at 0. Tone really depends on your guitar, but like it's very minimal, the impact of that. So let's look at the amp. Now I want to have maybe a little bit more distortion. I don't like to go crazy with the distortion. Even though this sounds really good. Let's maybe back it up a little bit. Yeah, it sounds really good for like a lead tone. So this is a crucial part that you need to get right, the amount of gain. Now it will depend on your pickups, of course, and like on the what you're trying to actually play. Obviously more gain helps, but too much gain makes everything muddy. So in this case, even at 10, like yeah, it's I think it's actually muddy. So I think around 7 or 8. And I think it's also muddy because we have the bright switch off. There we go. So if you have a bright switch, you can use that to go from like a more, darker tone, obviously, to like a brighter tone, fairly intuitive. And so in this case, the tone was a little bit muddy, so I think it's better with a bright switch on. And then bass, mid, and treble, honestly, doesn't matter. I like to boost a little bit of like mids, and make it not a noon, so it looks like it's doing something. But I like to push the mids for a lead tone, and then if you want to go for like a rhythm tone, you can like back off on the mids a little bit. But that's it. Presence, depth, it's basically another way of saying like top and bottom. Presence is more like high mids, depth is more like low mids. Yeah, it really doesn't matter. Like, I guess it's already sounding good, so like I like to maybe control the low mids a little bit and like have the depth knob like kind of low. It's a little bit more defined. And that's pretty much it. We can, I think on this plugin, we can drive the master. Yeah, so we get a lot more compression. I think it's like power amp distortion, probably. So yeah, it's like really squashing the sound. Makes it like really fluid, really easy to play. And also it does that like that thing on the low mids, like makes it distorted a little bit, like yeah, just makes it like very fluid sounding, very easy to play with, but obviously it's like there's a lot of compression, so let's maybe say like halfway. So we have like a little bit of help with the power amp, and the level is just volume. Right, so I'm already quite happy with the results. Very like mid-rangey, almost vintage sounding. Oh, we had actually this. This is like my go-to EQ. I just like, it's like high pass and low pass. And I think on the new plugin you actually have, I don't know why I'm using the old version, but on the new plugin you have the, I think the actual high pass and low pass, so I would use that. And then I like to bring down the 16K, just like make it a little bit less like obnoxious on the high end. I like that on lead guitars, and then there's like a little bit of tweaking that honestly doesn't matter too much. I mean, if I turn it off, you'll see that. just a little bit more defined, but you know, you can have it off, and like it's gonna be like stuff for like the mixing process anyway. And so yeah, you can we can ignore that. And then cabinet is probably the thing that will affect the sound the most. Like if you change that's nice. It's really cool. But you know, obviously it will depend on what you play. One trick that I like is I like to blend a like ribbon microphone with the SM57, because just the 57, like it's very harsh, like very direct. I mean, it works well. Obviously, like, you know, we're used to that sound, but for a lead tone, I like to make it just a little bit smoother. So, you know, the ribbon mic, you can hear that like it's way darker. I also move it a little bit on the side. So like it's like super dark. So you have the like, you know, smooth top end from the ribbon mic, and then the presence of the SM57. You can also like try, or actually it's just one ribbon mic. But yeah, so that's as far as like the mic section. If you're miking your cab, if you're not, obviously, you know, this doesn't matter. And then once you have a tone that you're happy with, you just add a ton of delay and a little bit of reverb. And these settings honestly don't matter. Like, I guess the only thing that I like, that I'm sort of particular about, is the EQ on the delay. Like, you don't want to have a delay that's too... I mean, this is already very dark, even with the high cut all the way up, but you don't want to have the repetitions of the delay too clear in terms of EQ. So, because usually with like analog delays, the repetitions are a lot darker. So the more the signal repeats, the darker it becomes. That's really nice because it creates sort of like a bed for the actual guitar, for like the dry guitar, and it creates like a separation between the two in terms of EQ, which is really nice. And so I like to make the delay kind of darker. You can hear the like it's like a little bit low passed. It creates like this smooth texture like in the background, which is really nice. It creates a kind of ambience. And then, you know, a little bit of reverb so it's not completely dry. This can also depend on the mix. But yeah, this is that's it. It's actually super simple. Like, you can do this with any plugin. The only thing that really matters, I think, like, you know, like the very important thing is the gain. So the input gain and then the gain on the amp. That's like the most important thing, because if you're using too much gain, it's going to sound bad. If you're using too little gain, it's going to sound gay. So, you know, the gain is the most important thing. All right, let's look at a rhythm guitar tone. We can actually use this tone as a starting point. So it's going to be obviously like a more like rock rhythm rather than a metal. We look at like a higher gain tone too, but so we can use basically the exact same thing. I'll just make it like more bitey and like more present on the high mids. So I'll try to just, you know, bring down the mids a little bit, push the presence up, push the treble. This is already off, and delay off. And let's see how this sounds like. It's like very muddy, so we can try to like bring up the gain maybe a little bit and bring up like the maybe the treble. What if we just put it all the way up? Yeah, I like that. Obviously it's like very like meaty and you know, a little bit muddy actually. That depends on the amp that we're using. I think actually Cab 3 was probably more like, I mean, that's even worse. It doesn't have a lot of definition, this amp in particular, but if you're going for like maybe a more rock rhythm, I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's gonna be the same tone basically. Actually, one thing we could do, there we go. There we go, that was the problem. So I'm gonna use just the SM57. And now we can actually back up with the presence and treble a little bit. Probably wouldn't use this on the 7th string, but okay, sounding pretty crunchy, I like that. And you know, you can play around with the cabinet for like different timbres, but pretty cool. So basically make sure you're using just a 57 for the rhythm, most of the time at least, obviously it depends, but the ribbon mic was making it sound like very muddy, like very round. I think something like this can work really well with like a split coil. Maybe it's a little bit too bright. I mean, yeah, it can work really well with a, you know, with split coil. Maybe some fine tuning with the EQ, but that can also be just mixing. But you can see that, yeah, it's pretty versatile. We're still using the same tone. We just turned off the delay basically, tweaked it a little bit. And it's mostly the same tone. Just to show you that you can get basically any tone with any amp and anything. As I'll show you maybe with the amp 3 on the Archetype Nolly, like the 5150. We can get still like similar results. But yeah, so as you can see, it works for just like normal lead guitar, rhythm guitar, split coil sounds, like more modern rhythm, and yeah, it's still the same tone. So that's why I always say, like, you know, tone is like maybe 20%. You know, it's just about dialing in the right settings, and then it's all about technique. But yeah, so moving on, let's try to get a clean tone. Let's see if we can get a clean tone out of the same amp. So I'm gonna turn on the ribbon mic again, turn off the overdrive, and let's see what we're working with. So obviously it's not gonna be like completely clean because it's basically a like distorted amp. But you can see that, you know, it works pretty well actually. If you add maybe a little bit more effects, a little bit more reverb, and we can also try like a very short delay in front, almost making it sound like a chorus. This is the neck pickup, but I Actually, let's try the bridge pickup. Probably just roll off the knob a little bit. It's a little too much delay, reverb. So yeah, it's a little bit like edge of breakup with this amp, but if we use the split coil, roll off the knob a little bit, turn up the level, turn down the presence a little bit, and boost the mids. We get a very analog sounding clean, well, not super clean, but I mean, pretty convincing. Probably next split. It's a little bit better. I like that more. Yeah, it's still the same amp. So, imagine, I like to do this because, imagine you have like an actual amp, right? Instead of a plugin. You're a little bit limited with the amount of options, and so this kind of replicates that a little bit more in detail. But obviously, you can use like a clean channel. Then, saying concepts are going to apply is just going to sound like cleaner. Can really see that, depending on the pickups that I'm using, I'm gonna have to tweak the gain a little bit. If I'm going for like the super clean tone, super clean would probably be like this. So not super clean. Yeah, so in this case, if I'm going for like the super clean tone, I'm gonna bring down the input. And on clean sounds, usually the compressor works pretty well. And you can see that I'm really not paying attention to like all these settings, like what that means, or like, you don't need that. Just, click on, move the knobs around a little bit. You're fine, like you don't have to overthink this. Right, so it's a clean tone. Again, everything else is still on the same settings, and also pretty much the same amp settings. And we're pushing the treble here because like this amp in particular is very dark, but that also will depend on your pickups. And then obviously you can play around with different cabinets for different timbre, but that's up to like your taste. And that's really it. So last one would be a more like high gain tone. So we're gonna go back to the state that we were in with like, the rhythm tone. So SM57, no delay, just a little bit of reverb. And then let's see, this was kind of the EQ that we had going on earlier. Let's see how this sounds like. I mean, yeah, it's basically done. It's a little bit too much gain for my taste. It's maybe a little bit too bright. I mean, obviously, this amp basically does all the job on, just on its own. it does the thing. This will do basically all the job on its own because it's a great emulation. Obviously, if you have the real one, even better. But these are basically the 4 tones that you need for, like, as a modern guitar player. That's all you need. Like, that's it. Just learn how to master and, like, really dial in, all the stages. And, don't overthink it too much. It's really not that deep. Super simple. Once again, just dial in your gain the right way, your EQ in general the right way, and you're pretty much done. Everything else, so if you still suck after that, it's because you can't play well. So you have to work on your technique. And so if you want to work with me for leveling up your technique, get to advanced level, we can talk about it. There's a link in the description if you want. If not, totally fine. Bye.